You're on Radio 97 as we talk law for this Thursday morning. Despina Priala with us from Priala Legal in Runaway Bay. If you have a question around the law, then Despina happy to answer that on the program for you. Just send it to us. And the best way to get our contact info is just go to the website radio97.com.au. Right there on the front page, our contact information is available. You can do that 24 hours a day, radio97.com.au.
Thank you, Ano. So this segment I'm so excited to announce because I think it will give a little bit of relief to our Queensland friends. So new pet tenancy laws came into force in Queensland on the 1st of October, so a couple of weeks ago. But Despina has all the details that can kind of put into light for our pet owners and landlords what has changed. So we can, I guess, start off with the tenants. What's changed for those pet owners?
Okay, so yes, big issue. And there's so many people renting premises in Queensland and other states. So new pet tenancy laws came into force 1st of October. That is 100% correct. The Residential Tenancies and Rooming Accommodation Act was changed last year, but these changes came into effect only recently, 2 weeks ago. So we want to talk about how it impacts tenants and landlords because it impacts both. And I think this is good for both parties because the changes really clarify once and for all whether a tenant can have a pet, how they can have a pet, how they can achieve that approval from the landlord, and also that the landlord cannot just simply go no pets. So the blanket prohibition that we may have seen in the past, where the landlord has said you cannot have any pets, is gone. So that's been made very clear.
Yeah, because the pet issue with tenants has and between tenants and landlords has always been a contentious issue. Yeah. Always.
Yes, it's been a contentious issue, not just for whether you can hold a pet, but also at the end of the tenancy in terms of the damage that the pets have caused. And I think that this has evolved for a number of reasons, and one of those being that pets do or can cause damage. It does depend on how the owners of those pets manage those pets and manage the premises, of course, as part of the tenancy. So I think these changes that have come about are very good. And as I like to say, when we have laws that clarify everyone's position really well, it makes it easy, I suppose, for landlords and tenants and managing agents as well who manage tenancies. So first thing we want to say again is there is no more a blanket prohibition, right? So if a tenant wants to rent premises and they say, can I have a pet? The landlord cannot just go up and say, no.
No.
Okay, so that's out the door. So there are statutory grounds now to refuse a pet. So when I said, okay, they can't say no, now the Act has certain grounds that give the landlord rights to refuse. And there's also statutory grounds now which say, okay, well, the landlord can approve a pet on certain conditions, and those conditions have to be reasonable. And now the legislation says, well, we consider these grounds to be reasonable. So it's really clarified the position quite well. So we want to talk about that. The first thing to say is for landlords, or I should start with tenants. If you want to go into premises and you have a pet, you want that approval, you ask for the approval. Now, you've got to put it in writing, right? So you've got to send that to the landlord or their managing agent, put it in writing. Now, for the landlord, you have to be really careful here because you've only got now 14 days to say, yes, here are the conditions, okay, or no, I'm going to refuse it on one of the grounds now listed in the Act, which we're going to go through. And this is the clincher, if you do not give a response within the 14 days or you don't comply with the new laws in the Act, which gives you those grounds to refuse, right? If you don't comply with any of those and you pluck out another, basis for refusal out of the air somewhere that doesn't comply with the Act, you are bound to have accepted that pet and you're bound to have agreed for that pet. And the other thing is you don't want to do that for that obvious reason. But the second reason is that if you just don't reply to the tenant's request in that 14 days, or you reply but you don't comply with the Act, then not only are you bound to have accepted the pet, but you can't put any conditions on that pet staying there. And why would you do that? Why would you do that? You'd be very foolish to do that. Right?
So this is so important. Well, obviously now that we're talking about it, and you'll highlight these details, because if you're a landlord and you don't know the details and you write back no, or don't give a reasoning that's along with the law, you
exactly
ruin yourself over.
Exactly. So let's talk about the grounds that are considered to be reasonable grounds in the Act for a landlord to give approval. So we'll go to the refusal in a minute, but let's talk about what the landlord can stipulate as part of the conditions, which I think are pretty fair and reasonable. So if the pet is not a type of pet ordinarily kept inside, right? So it depends on the pet. A condition that says the pet's got to be kept outside. All right, so that's one of the conditions you can impose. Another condition you can impose, which some landlords already do, which is a good thing, is that if the pet's capable of carrying parasites that could infest the premises, right, then you can request that the premises be professionally fumigated. And I would suggest that you could say in your condition every 6 months or every 12 months at least, right? To get those premises fumigated, or every 2 years, or at the very least when you end the tenancy, it's got to be professionally fumigated. And the other condition they've listed that they consider reasonable is a condition requiring the carpets to be professionally cleaned. Now, that's obvious, but sometimes it gets missed. And obviously, if you have dogs or cats in particular, of course, you'd want that carpet professionally cleaned, and it's most reasonable to request that. So these are the conditions. Now, in terms of, before we go to the grounds to refuse, I thought we'd look at the definition of a pet in the first instance, because we want to put this in perspective, don't we?
What is a pet? Yep.
What's a pet? Now, interestingly, pet's now being defined. So pet just doesn't mean a dog or a cat. So pet means a domesticated animal, right? Or, it says, or an animal that is dependent on a person for the provision of food or shelter.
So is a snake a pet?
Yeah.
Well, yes, it could very well be. If that pet, is dependent on the person for provision of food or shelter.
But it's so funny. That could be anything. Like, what if you
could be rats, could be mice, could be birds, of course.
Koala that couldn't feed because the mum was young and you're feeding it.
Exactly. What is excluded, and I want to be very clear, is working dogs. So assisted dogs, guide dogs. But what that means is, because it's excluded, it means that if you have one of those dogs, you don't have to seek approval. You just are allowed to have them anyway.
Oh, yeah, so no worries.
Yeah. That's important to know. Okay, so grounds to refuse. Okay, so here we go.
Juicy stuff.
So let's look at the first one. Keeping the pet would exceed a reasonable number of animals being kept at the premises. So we're talking about local laws. How many pets can you keep at those premises anyway, ordinarily? The premises are unsuitable for keeping the pet because of a lack of appropriate fencing or open space or something else necessary to humanely accommodate the pet. So that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Keeping the pet is likely to cause damage to the premises or inclusions that can't practically be repaired for a cost that is less than the bond.
Yeah.
Okay. Could be circumstances where that arise. Keeping the pet would pose an unacceptable risk to the health and safety of a person. And this is why I talked about the definition of pet before. It does say this includes those pets that are venomous, e.g. snake.
Spiders. Yeah.
Yes. So some people do keep venomous snakes, I guess, as pets.
Crazy.
You know, who are we to say that?
Who are we to judge?
Who are we to judge? Exactly. Keeping a pet will contravene the law, like we said before, local laws or body corporate bylaws. Okay, so that's important. So you got to look at the bylaws. So we've talked before on the show, there really can't be any more a blank prohibition in bodies corporate for not allowing pets. But there'll be a bylaw to allow pets on certain conditions. So obviously you have to meet those conditions as well. If you're in a body corporate, you're renting an apartment or a townhouse, etc. And the animal stated in the request is not a pet. So it doesn't fall within the definition of what we said before. It's really not a pet that you're asking to keep on the premises.
I'm trying to think of
what's an
animal.
example? Like a bull. What about a bull? I want to keep a bull in my backyard. Yeah.
Or a little Shetland pony.
Yeah.
You know, they're not domesticated animals, or are they? So
but that's the thing. Yeah, I'm like, my Shetland pony's domesticated. Sure, I'll bring it in. It's very interesting. But overall, from an expert's opinion, you think this is good news?
I think it's excellent news when the law clarifies parties' positions, and landlords and tenants often get into disputes, as we all very well know, about how a tenancy ends, keeping pets, a whole range of issues, damage. So now with the damage to premises, typically fair wear and tear is not part of the tenant's obligations to repair the premises when they leave. And now pet damage is not part of fair wear and tear. That's another change, which is really good news for landlords, because if there's pet damage, it's not included, meaning you've got to repair it when you leave. You can't dispute it. Oh, well, there's scratch marks on, as you were saying off air, on a timber floor by a cat. Oh, well, you've got to get that repaired as part of your obligations as a tenant. So that's really good for landlords. You know, so there's benefits on both sides here with these new laws. So I'm really happy about them. And if anybody wants some more guidance, I do have the Tenancy Laws Toolkit from the REIQ, and I've got that downloaded, and I'm happy to email that out to anybody who wants to receive it from me off air. They can reach out.
Awesome. So it's kind of like a digital checklist almost that you can go through and learn about these requirements.
Yes, and it's got other information there about other changes as well to ending tenancies, which we're going to talk about on the show in a few weeks. We can't include that today. It's a big topic. But yes, I'm happy to give that to people. It's going to serve as a bit of a guide, handy guide. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, if anyone does want to get in touch with you then, Despina, what is the best way, or where is the best place to go?
Yep, so they can phone the office 55 291 294. They can email info@prialalegal.com.au, and I'll have the segment up again on YouTube by the weekend.
Amazing. Just search Priala Legal, Priala. Thank you again, Despina and Wayne.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, I understand next week we've got a break, but we'll be back the following week.
I'm on holiday, but yes, we will return and more Talking Law to come. Thank you so much.
See you guys.